The alarm on the salvage ship screamed through the empty corridors. Captain Hal pulled himself from his sleeping pod and stumbled to the bridge, his 4 arms fumbling with the straps of his command vest. His crew was already there, staring at the main display with expressions he had never seen on faces before. Fear mixed with confusion. "What is it?" Hal asked, his voice rough from sleep. "A signal, Captain," said his first officer, "coming from inside the dead zone." Hal felt his blood run cold. The dead zone was what everyone called the exclusion areas, those cursed regions of space where the Great Silence had struck 3,000 years ago. 17 civilizations had died there in a single moment. Not died fighting, not died from plague or war. They just stopped. Billions of beings found standing where they had been working, sitting where they had been eating, lying where they had been sleeping. All of them empty. All of them gone in ways that made no sense. Ships that went into the dead zone too often came back changed. Crews would report headaches that never stopped, nightmares of things they could not describe, and a feeling that something was watching them from behind their own eyes. Most salvage companies refused to go near the zones at all. But Hal's ship, was desperate for work and low on fuel. They had been skimming the edges of the nearest zone for weeks, looking for easy pickings. This signal was not on the edge. It was deep inside, where no sane person would go. "What kind of signal?" Hal asked. "A distress beacon, very old design. The computer thinks it is human." The bridge went silent. Everyone knew about humans. They were the ghosts of the galaxy, the species that had vanished with all the others during the Great Silence. But humans were different from the other lost civilizations. They had been primitive, barely learning to reach their own moon when the silence came. Most scholars agreed that humans had been too simple to leave anything worth finding. "Human?" Hal moved to the display and studied the signal pattern. It was weak, barely there, but it had a rhythm that felt purposeful. Could be a trap, could be automated, running for 3,000 years on some fuel source we do not understand. "Or it could be a treasure," said. His greed was showing. "Human artifacts are worth more than anything else. Museums across the galaxy would pay fortunes for a genuine human relic." Hal knew his first officer was right. They needed money badly. The ship was falling apart and half his crew had not been paid in months, but something about this felt wrong. The dead zone had rules that everyone learned young. Do not stay too long. Do not touch anything you do not understand. Do not look too hard at the ruins. And never, never go deep inside. "Plot an intercept course," Hal said finally. "But we are not docking. We scan from a distance first." The moved slowly through the dead zone, its engines barely pushing them forward. The ship's psionic dampeners were running at maximum power, flooding the hull with a kind of mental static that kept the crew from sensing anything outside. It was like wearing thick gloves on your mind. Uncomfortable but necessary. Without the dampeners, crew members started hearing things, seeing things, feeling things that were not there. Doctor, the ship's, stood next to Hal as they approached the source of the signal. She was a species known for their careful nature and scientific minds. Her 6 eyes tracked the display with intense focus. "The ship is small," she said. "Single crew design, perhaps. Very old construction. I am seeing power readings that should not be possible." "What do you mean?" Hal asked. "The power source is still active after 3,000 years. That is not possible with any technology I know. Even the best batteries we have today would be dead dust after that much time." The human ship grew larger on the display. It was a simple design, much less advanced than even civilian transports from the current era, but it was intact, and that was strange. Most ships in the dead zone showed signs of damage, not from weapons or accidents, but from something else. A kind of rot that made metal look tired and glass look sad. This ship looked almost new. "Captain, I am detecting a pod inside," said. His voice shook. "It is active. Something is alive in there." The bridge erupted in nervous chatter. Hal held up one of his hands for silence. "Are you certain?" "Yes, Captain. Vital signs are weak but present. Whoever is in that pod has been frozen for a very long time. Hal made his decision quickly. We board, full protective gear. Dampeners stay at maximum. You are in charge of medical, bring a security team. Nobody touches anything except the pod. We get in, we get the survivor, we get out. The boarding party moved through the airlock into the human ship. The interior was dark except for their lights. Everything was covered in a fine layer of dust that had settled in the zero gravity over centuries, but nothing looked broken. The ship felt like it had been waiting. Hal led them through narrow corridors to the ship's small medical bay. There, sitting in the center of the room, was the pod. It glowed with a soft blue light and frost covered its transparent top. Inside, they could see a figure, a human. "It is female," said, running her scanner over the pod. "Young by human standards, I think. Her neural activity is unusual. The patterns are very stable, too stable. It is like her mind is locked in a single moment." "Can you wake her?" Hal asked. "I can try, but Captain, I need to show you something." Adjusted her scanner and displayed the readings for everyone to see. "Her brain is not just active, it is shielded. There is some kind of structure around her consciousness that I have never seen before. It is blocking my deep scans." "Is it dangerous?" "I do not know, but it is intentional. Someone designed this." Hal looked at the sleeping human. She appeared peaceful, her face calm and young. He thought about all the stories he had heard about humans. Most of them were sad stories about a species that had been too weak to survive the Great Silence. But looking at this ship, this impossible power source, this shielded mind, he wondered if the stories were wrong. "Wake her," he said. Connected her medical equipment to the pod and began the revival process. The pod systems were old but responded to her commands. Slowly, the frost began to melt. The blue light grew brighter. Inside, the human's chest began to move as her body remembered how to breathe. Then the monitors went crazy. Every screen filled with error messages. Stumbled back from the pod, her eyes wide with shock. "What is happening?" Hal shouted. "I do not know. Her neural activity just increased by a factor of 10, 20. I cannot measure it anymore." Around them, the 4 psionic-sensitive crew members collapsed. They fell to the floor, clutching their heads and making sounds of pain that were terrible to hear. Hal rushed to help them, but they were beyond his reach, lost in some private agony. The pod opened with a hiss of escaping gas. The human woman sat up slowly, as if she had only been sleeping for a single night instead of 3,000 years. She looked around the medical bay with calm eyes, taking in and the collapsed crew members with the same level interest. Her gaze was sharp and focused in a way that made Hal uncomfortable. She spoke, and her voice was clear and steady. The words came out in perfect galactic common, the trade language that had developed over the last 1,000 years, a language that had not existed when humans were still alive. "How long?" Hal's translator struggled for a moment, confused by the perfect pronunciation. 3,000 standard years, he said. The human nodded once, a sharp downward movement of her head. She looked at the collapsed crew members and something like sadness passed across her face. "I am sorry. I will lower my shields. Give them a moment." She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The collapsed crew members gasped and began to recover, their pain fading. They looked at the human with expressions of terror and awe. "Who are you?" Hal asked. "What are you?" "My name is Dr. Maya Reeves," the human said. She swung her legs off the pod and stood, though she swayed slightly. Moved to help her, but Maya waved her off. "I am a cognitive specialist. I study how minds work and how they can be protected." "Protected from what?" Maya looked at him with eyes that had seen things Hal could not imagine. "From the resonance, from the thing that caused the Great Silence. And if I have been asleep for 3,000 years, then you are in terrible danger. It is cyclical. It comes back every 3,000 years." The words hit Hal like a physical blow. What comes back? The thing that ended our civilizations, Maya said. She steadied herself against the pod and looked at each of them in turn. And if you found me, if you woke me up, then that means it is about to happen again. The silence is returning. In the corner of the medical bay, one of the recovered crew members began to laugh. It was a broken, hysterical sound that made everyone turn. The crew member was staring at nothing, his eyes unfocused. "It is already here," Maya whispered. "We need to leave now." They limped away from the dead zone at maximum speed, but Hal knew they were not running fast enough. Behind them, the human ship had gone dark the moment they left it, as if it had only been waiting to deliver its passenger. The crew member who had laughed was now sedated in medical, muttering words in languages that did not exist. Maya sat in the ship's small conference room, a cup of hot liquid in her hands. Had given it to her, something they drank to calm their nerves. Maya had accepted it without asking what it was. She drank it slowly while the command crew stared at her. "You need to explain," Hal said. He was trying to sound commanding, but his voice shook. "What is the resonance? What happened 3,000 years ago, and why do you speak our language?" Maya set down the cup and looked at him with those two calm eyes. "I speak your language because I studied it before I went into sleep. We knew someone would find us eventually. We prepared for every possibility." "That is impossible. Galactic Common did not exist when humans were alive." "We extrapolated," Maya said simply. "We analyzed thousands of languages from hundreds of species. We built models of how trade languages develop. We made our best guess and prepared ourselves to learn multiple variants if we were wrong. I was only partially wrong. Your grammar is different from what we predicted, but the core vocabulary is close enough." The room was silent. Finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Who were you people?" Maya smiled, but it was a sad expression. "We were survivors. That is all humans ever were. We were not the strongest species. We were not the... We did not have psionic abilities or long or perfect memory, but we were very, very good at surviving things that should have killed us." "Tell us about the resonance," Hal said. Maya nodded. "The resonance is what we called it. I do not know if it has a name for itself. I do not know if it thinks in ways we would understand. What I know is that it is a phenomenon that exists in dimensions we can barely perceive. It sweeps through the galaxy every 3,000 years like a wave passing through water." "A wave of what?" "Consciousness, hunger, attention." Maya struggled to find the right words. "Imagine you are an insect living on a beach. Once every 100 years, a tide comes in. You have no concept of oceans or moons or gravity. You just know that sometimes water appears and drowns everyone. That is what the resonance is to us. It is something so large and so foreign that we can barely understand what it is, only what it does." Leaned forward. "What does it do?" "It feeds on minds," Maya said. "Advanced minds. Civilizations that reach certain levels of technology or psionic development or quantum computation become visible to it. They shine like lights in the darkness, and when the resonance passes through, it consumes them. Not their bodies, not their cities or ships or art, just the consciousness inside. It leaves everything else intact." "That is what happened during the Great Silence?" Hal asked. 17 civilizations, billions of beings, all consumed." "Yes, and it will happen again if we do not stop it." Made a sound of disbelief. "How can you know this? You were in sleep. You did not see what happened." "I saw it coming," Maya said. Her voice was hard now, edged with old pain. "My team detected the resonance 70 years before it arrived. We spent every day of those 70 years studying it, trying to understand it, desperately looking for a way to survive it. While other civilizations were confident in their power and technology, we were preparing to die." "But you survived," said softly. "Yes, we survived. Most of humanity chose not to." Maya looked down at her hands. "When we understood what the resonance was, when we knew it was coming, our people faced a choice. The resonance feeds on certain types of consciousness. Advanced minds, complex thoughts, self-aware artificial intelligence, psionic abilities. All of these things make you visible to it, make you taste good to it. So what do? Hal asked. How do you hide from something that hunts minds? You make your mind taste wrong, Maya said. You change how you think. You reshape your consciousness into something the resonance does not recognize as food. My team developed a technique, a kind of mental discipline. It was like meditation, but much more intense. You had to hold your mind in a very specific pattern all the time without stopping. It was like holding your breath for years. That sounds impossible. It nearly was. Of the 12,000 humans who tried to learn the technique, only 400 succeeded. I was one of them, but even for us it was not enough. We could not maintain the discipline forever. We needed to sleep, and when we slept, our shields would drop. So we went into sleep, our minds locked in the protected pattern, waiting for the resonance to pass. What about the rest of humanity? Asked. You said most chose not to survive. Maya was quiet for a long moment. They chose to die as themselves rather than live as something diminished. The resonance does not kill painfully. When it comes, you simply stop. One moment you are thinking, feeling, being. The next moment there is nothing. Most humans decided that was better than spending decades in constant mental discipline, reshaping themselves into something smaller and simpler. That is insane, said. They could have evacuated. They could have run to the edge of the galaxy. They could have found some way to fight. We tried all of those things, Maya said. The resonance is not limited by distance. It passes through the entire galaxy at once, and you cannot fight something that exists in dimensions you cannot reach. You cannot hurt something that does not have a body. Our only choice was to hide or to die. Hal stood and paced the small room. His mind was racing. Why are you telling us this? What do you want from us? I want you to listen, Maya said. I want you to prepare. The resonance is cyclical. It comes every 3,000 years. If I was in sleep for 3,000 years, then it is coming back. Soon. How soon? I do not know exactly, but there are signs. The crew member who collapsed on my ship, the one who is sedated now, he is psionic sensitive, yes. Hal nodded. He is feeling the resonance approach. It is like hearing thunder before a storm. The more sensitive you are, the earlier you notice it. As it gets closer, more people will start to feel it. They will have headaches, nightmares. They will start losing time, forgetting things, feeling like something is watching them from inside their own minds. That is what happens in the dead zones, whispered. That is what researchers report, the cognitive degradation. Yes, the dead zones are places where the resonance touched most strongly last time. They still echo with it. People who study them are exposing themselves to a fraction of what is coming. Hal stopped packing and looked at Maya. We need to take you to the authorities. The Galactic Council needs to hear this. They need to prepare. They will not believe me, Maya said. I am a human from a dead species making claims about an invisible threat. They will think I am damaged from the sleep. They will want to study me instead of listening to me. Maybe, Hal admitted. But we have to try. If what you are saying is true, every living being in the galaxy is in danger. It is true, Maya said, and I will tell them everything I know. But Captain Hal, you need to understand something. Your civilization is more vulnerable than mine was. You have built your entire society on psionic technology, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, and networked consciousness. All of these things make you shine brighter to the resonance. When it comes, it will devour you faster and more completely than it devoured us. The conference room was silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. Finally spoke, his voice small. How long do we have? I do not know, weeks, months, but not years. The echoes are already here. I can feel it at the edges of my perception. The resonance is waking up. That night, as they traveled toward the nearest major station, Hal stood alone on the observation deck and watched the stars. They looked the same as they always had, cold and distant and beautiful. But now he knew that something was moving between them, something vast and hungry and impossible to fight. In her quarters, Maya sat in meditation, her mind locked in the protected pattern that had kept her alive for 3,000 years. It was exhausting work, like balancing on a knife's edge while carrying a heavy weight. But she did not stop. She could not stop. Because if she let her shields drop, if she let herself think freely for even a moment, the resonance would notice her. And if it noticed her before she was ready, everything she had survived for would be meaningless. 3 days later, they reached the station. The authorities were waiting, skeptical and curious in equal measure. They brought Maya before the Galactic Council, a gathering of the most powerful beings in known space. She stood before them in her simple clothes, a human from a dead species, and told them that they were all going to die. Most of them did not believe her, but some did, and that Maya hoped would be enough. The Galactic Council chamber was enormous, built to hold representatives from hundreds of species. Maya stood in the center, surrounded by a circle of beings who looked at her with everything from curiosity to contempt. Counselor, or, like Hal but much older and more decorated, led the questioning. His voice was sharp with impatience. "You claim that an invisible force killed 17 civilizations 3,000 years ago," or said. "You claim that this force is returning, yet you offer no proof, no data, no evidence beyond your own testimony." "I am the evidence," Maya said. "I am a human. We have been extinct for 3,000 years, yet here I stand. Does that not make you question your assumptions?" "It makes me question whether you are truly human or simply someone pretending to be," or replied. "DNA can be faked. Pods can be staged. For all we know, you are part of an elaborate hoax. Then test my DNA, study my ship, analyze every molecule if you wish. You will find that I am exactly what I claim to be." "Even if you are human," another counselor said, "that does not mean your story is true. You could be mentally damaged from the sleep, hallucinating, constructing elaborate fantasies to explain trauma you do not understand." Maya felt her frustration rising but kept her voice calm. 3 weeks ago, a research station in the Orion sector reported that 40% of their staff developed sudden cognitive issues. They were studying artifacts from the dead zones. 2 weeks ago, a passenger ship using new psionic navigation lost contact for 6 hours. When they responded to rescue calls, the crew was conscious but unresponsive. 1 week ago, an AI research facility on 442B had to shut down because their most advanced systems began producing outputs that made no sense. Are these things fantasies too? The council chamber went quiet, or his expression shifted slightly. "How do you know about these incidents? They are not public information." "Because I asked Captain Hal to research recent anomalies while traveling here. The patterns are beginning. They started small, but they will grow. Every day, more people will be affected. Every day, the resonance will get closer." "Even if these incidents are real," or said, "they could be explained by other causes. Equipment failure, disease, coincidence." "There is no such thing as coincidence on this scale," Maya said. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of as many counselors as she could. "Listen to me. I know you do not want to believe what I am saying. I know it sounds impossible, but your ancestors knew the truth. They lived through it. They saw their entire civilizations vanish in a single moment. Why do you think they left the dead zones untouched? Why do you think there are laws against going too deep, studying too carefully, staying too long? Those laws exist because of radiation and biological hazards," a counselor said. "No," Maya said firmly. "Those laws exist because your ancestors were terrified. They knew something had killed the old civilizations, and they knew it could kill them too. So they built their new societies carefully, limiting their use of certain technologies, restricting psionic development, avoiding the things that had made their predecessors vulnerable. But over 3,000 years, you forgot why those limits existed. You started pushing boundaries. And now you have built a civilization that shines even brighter than the ones that died. The chamber erupted in argument. Some counselors defended their achievements, others demanded more proof, and a few sat in thoughtful silence, or raised his hands for quiet. "What do you propose we do?" he asked. "Even if we believe you, how do we fight something we cannot see or touch?" "You do not fight it," Maya said. "You hide from it. I can teach you the technique my people developed. It is difficult and it requires practice, but it works. If enough people learn it, if enough minds are protected, the resonance will pass through without finding anything to feed on. And if we do not learn your technique, then everyone dies, not all at once. The resonance will take the most advanced minds first, AI systems, psionic networks, quantum computers. Then it will move to individuals with strong psionic abilities, then to normal people. It will spread like a plague, except there will be no bodies, no blood, no visible signs, just empty shells where people used to be." Or studied her for a long moment. "How long do we have?" "I cannot say exactly, but the signs are accelerating. Weeks perhaps, maybe a month if we are fortunate." "And how long does it take to learn this technique of yours?" Maya hesitated. "With intensive training, a person with no psionic abilities might learn the basics in 3 to 4 weeks. Psionic individuals take longer because they have to unlearn their natural abilities first. Full proficiency takes months." "Then we do not have enough time," Or said. "Even if we started training everyone today, the resonance would arrive before most people were ready." "That is why we need another approach," Maya said. She had been dreading this moment, knowing what she would have to propose. "I can broadcast the technique directly into people's minds. I can use the galaxy's psionic networks to send out a signal that will reshape consciousness at a fundamental level. Everyone touched by the broadcast will instinctively adopt the protected state." The council chamber erupted again, louder this time. The idea of having their minds forcibly altered was clearly disturbing to many of them. When the noise died down, Or spoke carefully. "You are proposing to change the thoughts of quadrillions of beings against their will." "I am proposing to save them," Maya said. "I know what I am asking is extreme, but there is no time for anything else. The resonance is not something you can negotiate with or run from. It is a force of nature. When a tsunami comes, you do not debate whether it is polite to move people out of its path. You move them and apologize later." "What would this broadcast do to us?" asked the counselor. "Would we still be ourselves?" "Yes," Maya said. "The technique does not erase personality or memories. It only changes the structure of consciousness, the way you process thoughts. You will still be who you are. You will just think in a way that makes you invisible to the resonance." "And what happens to you when you broadcast this signal?" asked. She had been given permission to attend the council session as a witness. "You will need to drop your shields to do it, yes?" Maya nodded, "Yes." "Then you will be visible to the resonance. It will come for you." "I know." The chamber went very quiet. Hal, standing beside, felt something heavy settle in his chest. He understood now what Maya had not said. This was a suicide mission. To save everyone else, she would have to sacrifice herself. "There must be another way," Hal said. "Some technology we can build, some weapon we can deploy." "There is not," Maya said simply. "My people spent 70 years looking for alternatives. We tried everything. This is the only method that works." "Why would you do this?" Or asked. The question was not accusatory, it was genuine, confused. "We are not your species, you owe us nothing. Humanity died while we lived. If anything, you should hate us." Maya smiled, and for the first time since waking, the expression reached her eyes. "That is not how humans think. We do not survive just for ourselves. We survive so that others can survive too. That is what makes us human. That is what made us worth saving." She looked around the chamber at all the different species represented there. 3,000 years ago, my people faced extinction. We could have fled to dark space and hidden, leaving everyone else to die. We could have focused only on our own survival, but we did not. We studied the resonance not just to save ourselves, but to understand how to save everyone. And we left messages, warnings, techniques hidden in places where we hoped someone would find them. I was one of those messages. I am humanity's last gift to the galaxy. The council debated for hours. Some counselors wanted to try other solutions first. Others wanted to evacuate vulnerable populations to remote areas. A few wanted to deny the threat entirely and hope it would go away. But as they argued, new reports came in. More stations going dark, more AI systems failing, more people developing the symptoms that Maya had described. Finally, or called for a vote. It was not unanimous, but it was enough. The council agreed to let Maya attempt her broadcast. The preparation took 5 days. During that time, Maya worked with the galaxy's best technicians to modify the psionic network. She needed it to carry her signal to every inhabited world simultaneously, something it had never been designed to do. The engineers warned her that the power requirements were enormous, that the feedback could kill her before the resonance even reached her. Maya accepted the risks without hesitation. Hal visited her on the night before the broadcast. He found her alone in her quarters, meditating as always. She opened her eyes when he entered. "Captain," she said, "you should be resting. Tomorrow will be difficult for everyone." "I cannot rest," Hal said. He sat down across from her. "I keep thinking about what you said, about humans surviving so that others could survive. I do not understand it. It seems inefficient. Why sacrifice yourself for strangers?" Maya considered the question. "Do you have children, Captain?" "I have 3 offspring, yes." "Would you die to protect them?" "Of course." "Why? It would be inefficient. Your death would leave them without a parent." "Because they are mine, because I love them." "Exactly," Maya said. "Now imagine that you could expand that feeling to include not just your children, but everyone's children. Every person trying to live their life. Every being with dreams and fears and hopes. If you could save all of them by giving up yourself, would you do it?" Hal thought about it. "I do not know, maybe." "That is the difference between us," Maya said gently. "Humans do not need to think about it. We feel the answer immediately. It is not logical, it is not efficient, it is just who we are." She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. 3,000 years ago, humanity chose to die rather than become something small and afraid. That was their answer. My answer is different. I choose to die so that everyone else can live without becoming small or afraid. Both answers are human. Both are valid. "I wish there was another way," Hal said. "So do I, but there is not. The resonance is coming, and I am the only shield you have." The next day, Maya stood in the center of the broadcast chamber, surrounded by equipment that hummed with power. The entire galaxy was watching, though most did not understand what was happening. They had been told only that a test of the psionic networks was taking place, and to remain calm if they experienced unusual sensations. Maya looked at the technicians and nodded. They activated the systems. Power flooded through the networks, and Maya dropped her shields for the first time in thousands of years. Her consciousness expanded, reaching out through the psionic channels to touch every mind connected to the network. The sensation was overwhelming. She could feel millions, then billions, then trillions of minds all at once, each one unique, each one precious. She began to broadcast her pattern, the mental discipline that her people had died to develop. It flowed out of her like a wave, touching everything, changing everything. Across the galaxy, beings paused in their daily lives as something fundamental shifted inside them. They did not stop being themselves. They did not lose their memories or personalities, but they began to think differently, to process consciousness in a way that made them invisible to the resonance. And in the broadcast chamber, Maya felt it arrive. The resonance was no longer distant thunder. It was here, vast and hungry and aware. It had noticed her, the one bright light in a galaxy that had suddenly gone dark. It reached for her across dimensions she could not name, seeking to consume the consciousness that had it so much food. Maya did not run. She held her position, keeping the broadcast active even as the resonance closed in. Her body began to fail, unable to handle the strain of channeling so much power. Blood ran from her nose and ears. Her vision blurred, but she did not stop. Hal, watching from the observation room, felt tears on his face. He had not known he could cry for someone not of his species. The broadcast lasted 17 minutes. 17 minutes during which Maya held back an existential force with nothing but her will and her humanity. 17 minutes during which she saved every living thing in the galaxy. When it ended, she collapsed. Hal ran to her, cradling her head in his hands. Maya opened her eyes and looked at him. She was smiling. "Did it work?" she whispered. "Yes," Hal said. "Everyone is safe. You saved us all." "Good," Maya said. Tell them we were here. Tell them humans did not end with the silence." "I will," Hal promised. "I will make sure everyone knows." Maya's eyes closed. Her breathing stopped. The last human died alone but not forgotten, surrounded by the alien beings she had given everything to protect. The resonance passed through the galaxy and found nothing to feed on. It moved on, hungry and frustrated, seeking prey elsewhere in the universe. Behind it, life continued. Children grew. Cities thrived. Civilizations built and dreamed and hoped, all of them thinking in a pattern that a lone human had taught them, all of them carrying a piece of her sacrifice in their minds. Hal kept his promise. He worked with the Council to build a monument in orbit around Earth, humanity's lost. It was made of dark matter, designed to last until the end of the universe itself. On it were carved Maya's last words in every known language, and beneath them, a line that Hal had added himself. She taught the galaxy to hold its breath. And every year, on the anniversary of the broadcast, beings across the galaxy paused for 17 minutes of silence. It became known as the human moment, a time to remember the species that had survived what ended civilizations, and then ensured that no one else would have to.